I still remember that feeling, when the darkness of Las Vegas not only covered the city but also filled my mind with fear and obsession. The birthday trip of his shy but kind friend Andrew turns into an unforgettable nightmare. We friends who were eager to create an unforgettable night did not foresee that all our fun plans would lead us into a dark abyss. In the dim glow of neon lights, where the presence of reality becomes blurred, we have entered a deadly game where every decision can be our last. And when night falls, everything is no longer a joke but a life and death battle with no turning back. I was 23 years old when this event happened, and now at 27, every week that passes, I see images of that trip playing in my head. It was a trip to celebrate the 21st birthday of our shy but always pleasant friend, Andrew. We decided to give him an unforgettable night, a night where he could push his limits. To do this, we planned a drunken night with the intention of making Andrew do something he had never tried before. The hotel we chose was the Horse Carriage, a place that seemed old and cheap, but enough so that we didn't have to worry about our budget. This hotel is not a beautiful place, but an old building with long, dark hallways. We had 2 separate rooms. 4 of our group shared one room, and Andrew and I shared one room. As soon as we checked in, we quickly went out to eat to fill our stomachs before starting our adventure. It seemed like everything was going smoothly, but the atmosphere started to get heavy as we entered the casino. Night falls, and the atmosphere in Las Vegas becomes more strange than ever. The light of the neon lights reflects on the wet road surface, creating hazy and haunting images. We wandered through bars and clubs, each with its own spooky look. But that night, things became increasingly gloomy when we decided to enter a bustling nightclub, where music and lights created a mysterious but also shady scene. At the nightclub, we ran into 2 of our friends, John and Eddie, having fun with the girls. They looked at us with questioning eyes, then returned to their fun. We feel the surreality and pressure of trying to get Andrew to approach a girl. Even though Andrew was drunk, his shyness and anxiety still prevented him from overcoming his fear of approaching anyone. Instead, he just stood there, like a pale shadow in the smoky night air of the nightclub. As the night grew deeper, our frustration and anxiety increased. We decided to leave the club and start looking for a girl to help Andrew have the experience we had planned. Although our actions seemed strange and unconventional, in our drunken and confused state, we had no other choice. Finally, we found a girl walking alone on a dim street. Her figure was like a ghost amidst the dim lights, with vague eyes and slow steps. We approached her with words of awkwardness and lack of confidence, asking her to spend some time with Andrew. Although Andrew was not a very unpleasant person, his drunkenness created an unpredictable situation. Things become more chaotic and scary than ever, as we feel that our every action is leading us into an uncontrollable situation. And as the night continues, we can't know for sure what lies ahead, only that things could get more bizarre and macabre than we ever imagined. Under the dim light of the streetlights, we tried to find a girl so Andrew could have a memorable night. The girl we met was nothing special, just a figure in the bustling crowd. However, her voice is deep and seductive, making it unforgettable for me. I don't remember exactly what she said in response, but I had a feeling that something was wrong. She analyzed Andrew from head to toe, as if wanting to learn everything about him just by looking. After a brief silent exchange, she grabbed Andrew's arm and pulled him toward the sidewalk. We stood there, feeling both amused and nervous, watching their every step. Andrew looked confused, but none of us thought the situation was strange, simply curious to see what would happen next. We followed them for about 15 minutes, maybe longer, but not sure. The street gradually became dark and quiet, with the faint light from the street lamps peeking through the shadows. The girl led Andrew into an old apartment building, and we stood there, feeling satisfied and proud to have helped Andrew have a new experience. However, when we returned to the club around 2 in the morning and returned to the hotel, Andrew was not in our room. Anxiety began to spread through me as I became more alert. John and Eddie, who did not participate in the previous trip, also appeared shocked to learn of Andrew's disappearance. We all thought he was simply spending the night with that girl, but Andrew's actions were not normal. My phone suddenly rang, and at first I vaguely thought it was an alarm. When I started to regain consciousness and realized that the sound was coming from my phone, I saw that it was Andrew's number. My heart seemed to drop to the bottom of my stomach. I let my friends know about the strange call and responded immediately. When I answered the call, on the other end was Andrew's heavy, panting breathing. His voice sounded like he was in a panic, full of fear. I put it on speaker so everyone could hear and got a vague message from him. Andrew whispered into the phone. The words were unclear, but we could hear a clear sentence. "It's that woman. You guys have to come here now." We tried calling his name, asking where he was and what was going on, but the other end of the line was just silent, as if something was blocking his words. We shouted into the phone, trying to understand the situation, but were met with eerie silence. The air around us seemed heavier than ever, and everything grew darker as we prepared to embark on an unpredictable journey. At that moment, I felt my body tremble nonstop, but what was about to happen was 10 times worse than I imagined. The other end of the line was suddenly interrupted by the sound of a door being pushed open with force, followed by Andrew's shrill and terrible screams. His screams seemed to tear through the night, then suddenly stopped in a terrible sigh. We stood there shocked and frightened, not knowing what to do. I immediately called the police and tried to remember the address, or at least the street we were following. In my panic, I could barely remember the directions, but one of my friends insisted he knew the exact location. The police came to the hotel and escorted us out. My friend led the way, past the club and along side streets, eventually arriving at an old building. 2 officers entered the building from a police car, while we had to wait in another car. The minutes of waiting felt like hours, filled with anxiety and fear of the worst that could happen. Finally, one of the officers returned to us. She asked us to go inside to confirm if the body was Andrew's. It felt like the whole world collapsed around me as John and Jerry started sobbing, not wanting to go in. I was the only one who decided to go in after the policeman. The building was not an apartment like we thought, but a dark and abandoned warehouse. In it, a corpse emerged from a closet. The victim's face was expressionless, his mouth open, staring at the ceiling. The scene was horrifying, but immediately I realized it wasn't Andrew. I clearly knew the victim's identifying features, especially the blonde hair, while Andrew had black hair. The police searched the entire area, but didn't know what to do next. I feel like Andrew might be hiding somewhere in the area, but there's no trace to confirm that. Although we tried to get rid of this thought, more than a month later, late one night, I received a strange call. I picked up the phone, but there was only a vague sound on the other end of the line and no one spoke. As I was about to hang up, a familiar voice said, "Jesse." "Andrew," I screamed in fear, and the door slamming from the other end of the line was the last sound I heard before the call ended. I called back many times but couldn't reach him. After 5 unanswered calls, I had no choice but to call the police again and ask them to trace the call, hoping that this time they would find out the truth. The strange call came not from Nevada as I thought, but from our own town in New Jersey. The address they provided was a house nearby. Although they promised to send someone to the house, the feeling of anxiety and the need to act immediately made me decide to go there myself. I quickly located the address and jumped into my car. It only took 5 minutes to arrive, an old house located in a corner of the neighborhood. I snuck up to the front door and pressed my ear to it, listening for any sounds inside, but there was only eerie silence. I turned around to the back and found an open window. I listened for a while longer, hearing clicks and small cracks from upstairs, the sound of someone moving across the wooden floor. I'm sure Andrew is in there. I jumped in through the window, and before I could even start looking, I saw something at the edge of the hallway. A figure stood facing me, its face hidden in shadow, only pale legs and shoulder-length black hair visible. It was a woman, and I felt a surge of fear at the thought that she might rush at me like in horror movies. But instead of attacking, she turned and ran in the opposite direction. I heard the door slam, then heavy footsteps stomping up the stairs, followed by the screams of both a man and a woman. The sound of footsteps pounding on the stairs was a clear signal, and I knew I had to run immediately. I quickly left the house and rushed into the bushes nearby. Less than 5 seconds later, I saw a police car pull up to the side of the road with lights flashing and sirens blaring. I heard an officer stoop, mutter something before slamming the door behind him, then, along with his comrades, entered the house. When the police came inside, I hid outside, not wanting to startle them and miss an important opportunity. I couldn't help but worry about a bullet hitting my head if I wasn't careful. I waited at the car, and a few minutes later an officer walked out with a handcuffed man. I introduced myself to the police and warned about the woman in the house, but they couldn't find anyone. In fact, one of the bedroom windows was completely open, indicating that she had escaped. Andrew was found upstairs, locked in a closet. His appearance was terrible. His hair was long and dirty, and the stench from his body could be felt from a mile away. Police profiled the man, but were unable to find out the woman's identity. Andrew claimed that he had only known her for a day, which shed no further light on the incident. He did not admit to being raped or beaten, and was barely fed or watered during his detention. Things get confusing and mysterious, and the suspense doesn't let up as we try to find out what really happened in that house. I couldn't imagine having to admit such a terrible thing to someone. The girl who led Andrew to that house was actually just part of a plan by a group of people whom Andrew described as operators. They forced Andrew to provide the hometown and addresses of the people who were with him that night, while in reality they were secretly watching and preparing for a darker plot. The intention of this group was not only to intimidate us, but also to add us to whatever sex slavery operation they were running. I was the only person in our group of friends with whom Andrew shared their plans. When someone asks about the incident, I can only say that I don't know what happened. Everything is not immediately clear, but the mystery and fear constantly increase. A few days later, I received a text message from an unfamiliar phone number late at night. The message simply said, "You blocked me," so I can't reply I was suspicious and blocked that number. However, this phenomenon continued to happen the next week, then the next week, then the next month. I was starting to suspect that it had something to do with the incident with Andrew. but I couldn't have imagined that it would last this long. One night I woke up to weak light shining through the window curtains from outside the backyard. It wasn't sunlight, but a dim light from the back porch. I could see a shadow moving in front of the curtains, and there was definitely someone out there. I couldn't see clearly from the gap under the curtain, so I gently pulled the curtain up a bit. In that moment, I saw a person standing by the window, looking straight at me as if they were waiting for something. But that person disappeared before I could take my phone to take a photo. I was convinced that it was the woman I saw in the abandoned house. That was the last I saw or heard from anyone involved in this. Everything about this entire situation makes no sense, even with the vague explanations Andrew provides. I don't see any point in continuing to learn about what happened to Andrew and the others. All I can do is wait for the next opportunity to face these guys. The next time I see any trace of them, I will be ready to call the police or take action myself to bring them to light. I sit here in the darkness of my room with sighs and sleepless nights, where the images of that trip continue to appear in my head like a constant nightmare. The strange calls, the mysterious figures, and the mysterious woman's presence still lingered in my mind, a painful reminder of what we had been through. Andrew is back, but he's not himself anymore. We couldn't understand everything that had happened, but one thing was certain: we were caught in a trap from which we could not escape easily. Every night when the light outside shines through the curtains, I still feel those mysterious eyes watching me, and I know that at any moment, the darkness of the past could return, waiting for an opportunity to plunge us into fear again.